This is Talk of the Devils, the athletic show dedicated to Manchester United. Coming up today, the summer transfer window is closed, so we review the summer business for the club. A goalkeeper arrived on deadline day. It was Senne Lammens and not Emi Martinez. We talk about that. And of course, outgoings pretty much were all finalised at the last minute, with Anthony and Jadon Sancho amongst the players to leave. We get into all the detail on their exits. We've got a full house, as you'd expect. It's the international break. The transfer window has slammed shut, so everyone's at a loose end or enjoying the break. Is there a break when it comes to covering Manchester United? I have no idea. But hello, Carl, Laurie and Andy.
Hello.
I am over-caffeinated. Laurie, what time did you go to bed last night?
Oh, yeah, it was quite a late one, about 1 a.m. The night before was sort of 2 a.m, up at 6 a.m, up at 6 a.m. today. It's good. I feel invigorated, but I am grateful that we've got an international break. The transfer window's closed. United won their last game, so hopefully there's not the sort of uncertainty around Ruben Amorim's position that we felt there might be after the Grimsby match. But as Ian says, you never quite know with Man United.
No, Andy, I imagine you're just on a massive downer now the transfer business is all sorted. I mean, there's still the Turkish and Saudi Arabian windows to keep you interested. Are you all right?
I'm not, actually. I had a wisdom tooth out on Friday and they put me on pretty strong antibiotics and painkillers, and I was fine for 3 days, and then on Monday, just after the window has closed, so maybe my body was preparing myself, I had a horrendous night. I couldn't sleep. Oh, no. I was vomiting, so I'm not been feeling very well, which is pretty unusual for me because I do an ill day once every 5 years or something, but I'm going to go through this.
I hope you're feeling better. Hopefully the conversation over the next hour or so doesn't make you feel worse. It shouldn't do. Before we get into it, I need to make an apology. Lots of people got in touch on email, on social media, in DMs. It turns out a lot of you know quite a lot about Hugh Grant's sitcoms, and I am now just the host of a podcast standing in front of you asking for forgiveness for mixing up my 1990s Hugh Grant rom-coms. Because yes, indeed, I did confuse Love Actually with Notting Hill, or the other way around. I'm still not completely clear, but my apologies. But thank you, Peter, for emailing in, and everyone else who got in touch as well. The reference from Critch was Notting Hill. So we can all move on with our lives,
you just called it a sitcom to begin with as well there, Ian. What's going on here? You saved it with a rom-com at second mention, but, you know, let's move on.
Yeah. Of all the things to not get right, I feel like being wrong about this particular genre of subject matter.
I thought it was Love Actually as well, mate. So hands up to me. You know,
okay.
We could have corrected you.
Yes, you could have, but you didn't. Anyway, let's talk about Manchester United goalkeepers, because that's been the topic at hand, it seems, around the club, in terms of incomings at least anyway. And it's Senne Lammens who is the choice. We thought that would be the case, Carl, didn't we? But that didn't come without a little bit of twist and drama on deadline day, did it?
I did start knocking up a couple of hundred words just in case they would pivot to Emi Martinez, just in case. But
hedging your bets.
Hedging your bets. The piece that I worked with Matt Pajorski has gone live now on Senne Lammens. We did talk about him the last time we were all in the studio together in real life, and I think I've described him as a David De Gea, octopus arms, octopus legs, and it's a promising signing. I think the intention originally when he popped up on all the United shortlists and data lists was this would be someone who could be a superior number two to Bayindir, someone who could push Onana right until the limit in the number one, and also take over from Onana when Onana goes away on AFCON duty as well. But considering the current confidence or set piece weaknesses at Manchester United, maybe Lammens can supersede Onana before AFCON begins. We'll have to see there. But yeah, at the moment, it's a promising signing. I think it's probably the correct signing to make. While Emi Martinez is the Premier League proven player, I think wages and age would have caused problems further down the line. So yeah, I'm pleased with this business, and I understand how Man United went about going for this player over the other options.
Okay. I mean, 23 years old, Laurie, £18.2 million and around £3.5 million in add-ons paid to Royal Antwerp for him. He's only had one full season as a clear first-choice goalkeeper in Belgium's top league, but it was a very impressive season, stats-wise at least.
Yeah, I mean, as Carl's sort of touched on already, I think you've done a couple of pieces, haven't you, on our mate Lammens, and it's good that he did a little piece to camera for Manchester United's official channels to say how you pronounce his name, because I've been calling him Lammens, and we don't want to have any mispronunciations on this podcast again, do we?
Not again.
Yeah, so he overperforms his XG. There we go.
Big Senne. I mean, it works, doesn't it? Because he's huge, 6'3", 6'4", whatever he is.
6'4",
24
he's
hours.
built.
Are we having that? 24-hour party people? The Manchester connection? No? Too much?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we can move on.
I mean, yeah, on the data front, clearly that's something United have used to sign him, because they mentioned that in the communications that they're putting out to people in terms of, why they've gone for him. The overperformance of XG in the Belgian Pro League last season. Clearly he's facing a lot of shots because he's the top of that particular metric as well. So I suppose the opportunity to overperform your XG is there if you're facing a lot of shots all the time. But still, not to be sniffed at. I mean, the big question is, how do you transition from the atmosphere at Antwerp to then Old Trafford, the Premier League, the pace of the English top flight? That's something that people that I've spoken to that have watched him and interviewed him, Belgian journalists, are questioning. But then again, I suppose you don't know until you try it. And to Carl's point, I think it is interesting, where does he now fit into this goalkeeping department that they've got? So obviously they've got 4 goalkeepers. Okay, Tom Heaton is obviously at the top end of the spectrum in terms of what he provides, but you've got Altay Bayindir and Andre Onana, who have sort of swapped the number 1 shirt so far this season. But it's probably Bayindir's to lose at the moment, because he's been starting the Premier League matches, and again, not looking certainly in every aspect of the game. But it feels like Onana, I don't know, I feel like he's got to do something to come back into Amorim's selections, because clearly there's something else a little bit going on there that we can touch on later in the podcast. But so does Lammens manage to get that number 1 shirt sort of straight away? It's going to be really fascinating. I would imagine that he needs some time to sort of bed into English football like Benjamin Sesko has had, although I guess it is a little bit different. You're not having to kind of interlink with your teammates, are you? I suppose you are, in goal, to be fair, understanding your centre-backs, but I mean, not quite as much as you do
more
when you're an
pressure,
outfield
though,
player.
surely.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, does that, until you rip the Band-Aid off, like, do you not know? I mean, do you need to get acclimatised to English football, you think, before actually starting him in a game?
Well, it'd just be a huge call to make him number 1 straight away for the Manchester derby at the Etihad Stadium after the international break, wouldn't it? Players have done that before. Patrice Evra is the one who sticks in my head for starting in a huge game, and he won't have a brilliant memory of the Etihad. Massimo Taibi all those years ago, starting at Anfield as well. It was a 3-2 win, but I'm not sure he'll have brilliant memories of it either. So,
man of the match that day, even though he kind of made mistakes.
Well, yeah, he actually was, wasn't he? Yeah, he was. Andy, you have done a little bit of background check on the new goalkeeper. So how capable do you think he is going to be to just arrive in Manchester and be the first choice straight away?
He came from Royal Antwerp, and for nearly 20 years, Manchester United had a link up with Royal Antwerp. And I went over there 5 or 6 times, and really, really struggling club. The current Royal Antwerp, who played Champions League football 2 years ago, are in a much, much better place. And I got to know Paul Bistio. He was basically running the club. And I said to him yesterday, I asked him about the new goalkeeper, and he said he's an excellent young goalkeeper. I think he can deal with the pressure that he will inevitably endure at United. He could be the real thing in goal for them at last. I also spoke to Rudy Garcia, who's the Belgian manager, and I'd interviewed him several times, and he was the one who lost out to Ralf Rangnick to be Manchester United's assistant manager, a caretaker manager in 2021. And he got to the final 2. Yeah. So, and he'd obviously managed at big clubs like Roma and Marseille and Lyon and stuff like that. So I'd interviewed him at a couple of those places and just got to know him pretty well, kept in touch with him, and now he's a Belgian manager. And he said he likes him as a person and as a goalkeeper. And I'm like, well, why are you not selecting him for Belgium then? And he's like,
good question.
Because he's got a lot of very good goalkeepers. So he would be the younger one. He's got some of the best goalkeepers in the world there. He does know, because he's managed at real pressure clubs, the ones I've mentioned. Marseille is ferocious. I think he knows that. So let's just see what happens. I would expect the goalkeeper to become an international. I wish him all the best. Sometimes, even though they're young, they're just full of confidence. And Peter Schmeichel always had like a confident stroke, self-assured arrogance about himself. And maybe you need that to take it on, because he's getting abuse already. He's not even played a game.
Oh, there's been reels cut of his worst moments plastered across social media already. Welcome.
So if you've never had that, people react to it differently. Yeah. I suppose the advice would be just don't go on social media. Don't let your family go on social media. Just stay away from it if you're talented. And what also comes out quite quickly when a new goalkeeper comes is what the players think of him. So pretty early on with Onana, I was getting feedback that we're a bit worried here. And I've, over the years, seen some pretty harsh critiques of goalkeepers because more have failed than been a success. So I hope he's a long-term success, and let's see.
Yeah, Carl, you mentioned the article that you've written before, appraising the goalkeeper that Manchester United have signed. You said about the David De Gea comparisons in some of his technique, but there's question marks maybe over some elements of his positioning, claiming aerial balls as well, even though his record actually on paper looks very good. I mean, just looking at some of the data, and like Laurie says, United have used this to highlight to highlight him as a target in the first place. So you've said about his post-shot XG differential being plus 14.5, which for anyone who doesn't quite understand that basically means that he has prevented over 14 goals due to the quality of the attempts on goal from opposition players. It's the third highest total in Europe's top 8 leagues from last season. 127 saves is the most, and the Belgian league leader for shots saved percentage of 81.4%. So all the metrics are good. 5 out of 7 penalties saved as well, which I think is the most of anyone in the top 10 leagues in Europe. So it's getting complicated. I'm struggling to even read what I've written. But whichever way you cut it, statistically, the data looks good. So, United are invested in someone who clearly is performing at a high level, even though it's in Belgium, even though it's his first year as a senior keeper, even though he's not got that international recognition yet.
I mean, first of all, bravo for reeling off all those numbers. Trying to explain post-shot XG or those statistics, I always get a sentence in and go, oh my God, this is so... Why is this so complicated?
I know what it means, but I can't really explain it properly. Yeah.
It's if there was an average goalkeeper in the same scenario, the average goalkeeper probably would have let that in. And statistically speaking, Lammens is basically like goalkeeping octopus in just stopping shots, and it's outstanding. And he jumps off the page. This is statistically there. I think the question now is how that will scale up to the Premier League. So when I did my first shopping for Amorim piece, looking at goalkeepers, one thing that really stuck out about Lammens' shot stopping is he's really aggressive coming off his line if he thinks the striker is taking a heavy touch, or he thinks a winger is taking a heavy touch, which is good goalkeeping 101. Player takes a heavy touch, you shoot up, squeeze the space, so by the time they have the next touch, you're right in their face. Question is, when you do this in the Premier League where the strikers are better and the attackers are better, those heavy touches are less frequent. Is he going to be able to set in the right way? We'll see there. In terms of his claims and high balls, I know when Andy's already spoken about this, about the clips that are doing the rounds, saying, oh no, he's actually just as bad as everyone else in terms of coming for the ball. Matt P. Has been really, really useful as a sounding board for me in terms of going, this is what the numbers are saying. What's your eye test saying as someone who's been a goalkeeper? And he believes his aggression is good. And if you are a goalkeeping coach or you're trying to teach someone to be a goalkeeper, it is better to have a goalkeeper who is leaping, but the timing's a little bit off, than having a goalkeeper who doesn't move and then teaching them how to leap in the first place. If you are a Stretford ender and you are going, oh, hang on, no, I disagree. I think that's totally fair to say as well. Because again, this is the Premier League. This is the land of giants and the land of opposition scouts and analysts who are going to hunt down every weakness they can find, or any perceived weakness they can find, and try and exploit it over and over and over and over and over again. I think Bayindir's weakness at the back post on set pieces is a more recent find, and is definitely a more recent exploit that teams are going against, and that's something that needs to be addressed. So, good player, statistically very, very good. How do those statistics move into a bigger league where your strikers are now Alexander Isak and Hugo Ekitike and Mohamed Salah and Victor Gyökeres compared to the strikers in Belgium? That's a big question. I think one thing that might stand him in favour over, say, Bayern Deer at this point in time is he does have a nice confidence to him. He doesn't, in the footage I've seen, he doesn't mind having a go at his centre-backs after he's made a save, or when he's going, the ball's up in the air, doing a Lammens, that's mine. He goes for it. He's not to the same level as Emi Martinez or David Raya. I think those are the two best goalkeepers in the Premier League in terms of ball in the air, mine, grab it. But also, David Raya and Emi Martinez took time to get that good at claiming it. So we'll see here. I really think this is a astute purchase. However, there's no guarantees at Manchester United, is there?
No. And the question that a lot of people have been asking in the inbox, Laurie, as well, Lee sums it up. Why have United gone for Lammens over Martinez? He says it seems odd to him. What do you think?
I mean, quite frankly, the Martinez one was a very difficult one to do financially, which I suppose you'd expect for a player of his calibre, won the World Cup, signed a new contract at Aston Villa just last summer to 2029, a very lucrative contract. So I'm of the understanding that he's already on more money than Andre Onana, for example. And so to add him into the mix whilst Onana is still at the club, it's a difficult balance, in terms of budget, but also perhaps in terms of just managing the players. Ruben Amorim was certainly an advocate, I think, for Martinez earlier this summer. They spoke, and Lisandro Martinez advocated for him. Obviously, they played together with Argentina. And I think there was obviously a loan bid, wasn't there? But United never really made a kind of proper offer to Aston Villa, who we're told, I did a piece with Jacob Tanswell, who covers Villa for us, the Villa would have been seeking something like 30 million as a transfer fee for a 32-year-old, plus the wages on top. It's just a lot of money. Now, Martinez, I think, really did get his hopes up to come and join United. He was at Aston Villa's Bodymoor Heath training ground yesterday, basically waiting for the call. So I think this has kind of come as a surprise to him that United have gone a different direction. But I think United probably were always of the mind to go for Lammens. Obviously, we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago where it felt like at that point that it was going to be the guy that they were going for. But then as the deadline approaches, they want to have other options just in case Antwerp are really hard on the 25 million euro asking price, or, there's some issue with maybe even the personal terms with Lammens, although I suppose they were never really going to be much of a trouble when you're going from Antwerp to Manchester United. And he was keen for the move. But it was just quite an interesting sort of picture, I suppose, when you've got Martinez at Bodymoor Heath, Lammens boarding a private plane in Antwerp 8 hours before the window closes, this kind of sliding doors moment. And, that's when United went for Lammens and got the deal done with Antwerp. And obviously he's there at Carrington getting the pictures and doing the medical. So, yeah, I think ultimately you've got a club that want to invest in younger players as a kind of instinct. You've maybe got a manager, head coach who wants to hit the ground running now. I certainly think, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, as well as the co-owner who has the most influence really in what's happening at United, has that kind of desire to strike now. But then let's see if Lammens is able to actually affect the season as we have it right now. But I think they've had a long-term view on him. You've got Jason Wilcox there as the director of football, certainly backing this one, chief executive Omar Barada as well. They come to a kind of collective decision, and that made the choice for them. I think that the financials as well as the footballing point of view.
Did you mean to name drop another rom-com in there?
Which one did I drop? I'm trying to think.
Sliding Doors, my man. Sliding Doors.
Okay. Was that Julia Roberts as well?
That was Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth Paltrow. Okay. Damn, we really need to sharpen up, don't we? I mean, from a personal point of view,
I don't feel it's an area that we need to sharpen up on, to be honest.
I just think I like that they've gone for Lammens rather than Martinez. I don't know. Martinez never quite struck for me, and with the kind of character that he's got, that I think certainly what Amorim and Martinez were advocating. I don't know. I just think maybe is it too much, and then like I say, the last time we saw him, he was getting sent off at Old Trafford. So I don't know how you can sign a player after that.
There's two things that stick in my head. There's the sending off at Old Trafford, which was the final game of last season, and there's also obviously what happened after winning the World Cup and some of the exploits off the field.
How would Bruno Fernandes have felt? What do you reckon? Like, after him calling him out for the penalty, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too microcosmic about this. Is that a word? But anyway, I'll let you guys speak now.
Yeah, I just think the image of him waving goodbye to Villa Park at the end of last season, and then obviously not playing against Crystal Palace even at the weekend, he clearly thought that there was a move coming for him, and he's still at Villa. So
I think you're right, Laurie, with Martinez and the money. I'm glad Manchester United have got a goalkeeper. I don't know what happens now to Bayindir. All the reports I get about Bayindir as a person are really complimentary about him being a good human. It's a very specific position. And looking back at interviews I've done with goalies over the years, I once remember going to Carrington and interviewing a goalkeeper, and one of the other goalkeepers was there, and he turned to me and went, "I'm not doing anything in view of him." So it was clear they hated each other. And then another time I was speaking to United's press officer, going back, a long time, and I said, "What's so-and-so like?" She went, "Oh, they're all right, apart from him." And that was a completely different goalkeeper. So you can see sometimes they just do not fit in at all, and they don't need to fit in at all. And they've all had the quirks.
I kind of want the goalie to be a bit of a lunatic, to be honest. I mean, that was the one aspect of Martinez that you could see him easily becoming an absolute hero at Old Trafford because of how crazy he seems to be in a way.
Yeah. I'm pining for Dean Henderson for that reason.
Oh, what could have been? Andy's raised a really good point here, and I'm sure we've all seen it in post game. It looks to be the goalkeeping group at United right now seems to be in really good spirits. Onana seems to get on really well with Bayindir. Tom Heaton I've seen 2 or 3 times Tom Heaton offering an encouraging arm after some disappointing goalkeeping performances as well. So the trio, as it currently exists, they all appear friendly. I'm not going to call them friends because unfortunately I can't eavesdrop on all the conversations.
They've got this little union together. So you've got the goalies, but you've got the coaches working with them every day. And it just reminded me, I interviewed another former United goalkeeper not so long ago, and he was very critical of one of the coaches on the record. Sometimes they'll be off the record, they'll tell you, and on the record, within 24 hours of it going out on The Athletic, said coach inboxed me. I believe you've done an interview with X. Is there any chance I could see it, please?
No.
But I didn't send it to him.
Oh, controversial.
Andrew.
People go back and research that now, I'm sure. The one thing that you hope is that the extra competition raises the standards, and obviously some of the errors that we've seen at the start of this season are wiped out. Obviously, Andrew Onana's mistakes at Grimsby felt like a key reason why Manchester United didn't go through. And speaking of Grimsby, we've been told that United will not pursue an appeal despite the fact that they fielded an ineligible player in the second round League Cup tie against Manchester United. They've been fined £20,000. The club have said it's not a deliberate mistake. There was no intention to deceive or mislead anyone. But essentially, Clark Adore wasn't registered in time to feature in that match, but did feature and ended up missing a penalty in the shootout as well. So just all adds to the narrative, Andy, doesn't it, really? Would you actually want that game to be replayed if you were given the opportunity, or do you think it's best we all just move on with our lives?
I think United have done the adult thing here, but I'm not an adult, am I? I want to see Manchester United play at Hillsborough for the first time in 25 years, because that was the next round of the draw.
Straight by to the next round, not even a replay.
Well, play them again, let them make a few quid, absolutely blitz them, go onto social media taking the piss out of their manager, which I thought was pretty disrespectful, hammer them as well, proper slaughter them, and then go to Sheffield Wednesday away in the next round where Harry Massey is now playing and smash them as well. Yeah, sorry. That was my alter ego there getting a bit carried away. Yeah, Manchester United have done the adult thing. Grimsby were well worthy of their progress, he says, through gritted teeth.
Just let you simmer down. We'll take a short break and then we'll come back to the adult conversation, as you said. Okay, well, deadline day at Manchester United wasn't just about arrivals. It was a lot about outgoings as well, Laurie, wasn't it? Trying to keep up with all this stuff in the final 24 hours was quite a challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's been sort of, telegraphed all summer that the United are going to do these deals. I mean, thankfully, it was kind of as we expected, right? Garnacho going to Chelsea and Antony going to Real Betis. That was a fun little episode on, I think, was it Friday or Saturday, when it was sort of, he's in, he's out, releasing statements, and then ultimately, you get around a table and you thrash it out, and it comes down to money, right? Who pays what and when, how much does the player get, that kind of thing.
He's broken down in tears at his unveiling as well. So obviously it took his toll on him over the weekend too, yeah.
I've seen, he's been greeted like a hero, hasn't he? And they're sort of singing his name, Antonio, rather than Anthony, I think. I guess that's the Spanish variation. But yeah, he's obviously, that's where he should be, right? He's had that fantastic loan spell, that sorted it out, and they ultimately did. Clearly, it's not a great amount of money, but I suppose, that's still better than what they were getting from him because he wasn't in the picture. And this 50% sell on, it's of the profit. So I guess, it depends if Real Betis would sell him for more than, 23 million euros in the end, was it? I forget how it ended up being, but yeah, so if they happen to sell him in future, he's 25 now, so that could be worth a few million for United. But the Harry Amas one, Tyrell Malacia is still, I'm not sure what situation he's in, because I think the Elche deal broke down in the end. But Jadon Sancho going to Aston Villa was an intriguing one. I hadn't seen that one come in, to be honest. And that was, at that point, I wondered if, is this part of the Emi Martinez conversation as well? But ultimately, it was a separate thing, and United, I think, are getting 80% coverage of his salary, could reach full coverage if certain bonuses are activated, a bit like when he went to Borussia Dortmund, or a bit like when Marcus Rashford went to Aston Villa. So it's interesting, isn't it? I kind of feel like Unai Emery had that performance against Crystal Palace and just thought, right, we need to activate here on some signings, and Jadon Sancho, he obviously feels after the Rashford episode that he can get a tune out of a player that at the moment is out the picture at United.
Andy?
Anthony is delighted to be back in Seville. It's a wonderful city. It's a huge club. There was a
nice chips
discrepancy of 6 million on Friday. So I think United have negotiated well here to get a deal done. We said on the last podcast about whether we thought the deal would go through, and I thought it'll go right to the last minute, and it did do. He talks about his time in Manchester and what a nightmare it was for him, and okay, that's his opinion. But some of that is also on him, by the way. I've seen some United fans going, he's done absolutely nothing wrong. Well, yes, he has. Yes, he has. And he was brilliant when he played for Betis. It's a good signing for Real Betis. As Laurie said, if you do well in La Liga and a bigger fish comes in for you, there's good money to be made there as well. He basically joined United at a difficult time for too much money, and neither of those 2 points were his fault, and got into a pretty negative cycle where he wasn't playing and he was unhappy, and it's a shame it's come to this.
Yeah, Rasmus Hojlund I feel sorry for as well, in a way, and I know that people will argue this, I'm sure, but it just feels like a ruthless call from United. Now, I've talked about this on previous shows. Maybe that's what people want from the club, to make more ruthless calls and not have players hanging around who it's felt are not reaching the levels that they are expected to. But yeah, Carl, what do you think? What do you think about the Rasmus Hojlund one in particular? Because he is the one player who obviously wasn't part of this so-called bomb squad that was dragged out of the group that was told they were Amorim's players, basically, and obviously now will continue his career at a new club. It's a good club, in fairness, and former Manchester United players have done all right there as well, so maybe there's hope for him. It's
a good club. It's a good move. You'll turn up to Naples to be the replacement to an injured Romelu Lukaku, and you're going to be playing next to Scott McTominay and Kevin De Bruyne. The fun never stops. I know Andy's spoken previously on this podcast about how it feels as if something changed during US preseason tour. Hojlund goes in, starts playing the first couple of games, and then doesn't play the final three, doesn't make the matchday squad. And it felt like something occurred during this tour where United decided the best thing for Hojlund isn't to be encouraged to be a second choice striker to a more senior striker coming in, like, say, Ollie Watkins, for example, But actually, the most useful thing to do with Hojlund is to flip him, to turn him into a flippable asset, and to use him to top up the bank balance going forward. I think there is a good striker in Hojlund, and I definitely think there is a pretty good chance of him coming good back in Italy. I know Gasperini said he wished he had stayed at Atalanta for an extra season, and Antonio Conte, it feels like Antonio Conte is less likely to use him as a target man to collect long balls, and perhaps, hopefully, Hojlund will have more space to run into and get some goals in there. I misdiagnosed the relationship between him and Scott McTominay when they were in United shirts, so I hope they can crack on and have a good time in Naples together. So yeah, look, I like it when good football players find the correct situation for them and the environments for them where they can play good football. And at this point in time, it's more likely to be in Naples than it is in Manchester. So all power to you, Hojlund, crack on. One thing I will say is I'm actually quite surprised. United shifted 4 of the 5 in the bomb squad. Yeah. And the only reason why they didn't shift Malacia is because the medical, well, partially to do with the medical, but perhaps to do with one of the clauses on the loan didn't go through. So I know we've given a lot of jib about United being bad at selling and United not being great transfer operators. But I'm going to give a small, well done. 4 out of 5 ain't bad.
No, it's good. And then you add Hojlund onto that as well, in fairness, who potentially would probably bring the biggest fee in the end as well. There's just over a 5 million loan fee and then a £38 million obligation to buy, which we're told is if Napoli qualify for the Champions League, which you'd fully expect them to. So, yeah, good luck to him. Like I said, Laurie, it does feel like a ruthless call on him. And actually the entire position of the club to ostracise the 5 players and have them separate from the group throughout the entire pre-season feels like a very hard-line stance to take as well. And it's one of the things that you've written about in your transfer window review piece, which is on The Athletic now. Lots of detail in there. It's quite a journey through it, to be fair.
Just the 4,000 words.
It does feature heavily this summer-long search for a striker for United, which always felt like a priority from the very first minute of the window.
Yeah, I mean, Carl's right. I think, I don't know if it's something changed, but it's certainly hardened anyway on tour because, as we've said on this podcast, I had a sort of suspicion that Hojlund would, be sold eventually. I know I fluctuated a little bit.
Oh yeah, but you won the hokey cokey, didn't you?
I'm coming back round. Can I claim that one? I know I sort of had
you can claim
doubts,
it.
but it was a while back, wasn't it? So I just
believe
thought,
in yourself, Laurie.
I know.
Believe in yourself. That's a message for you. Okay.
Well, I believe in myself, but maybe it was just I wasn't sure about what United would actually do or be able to do. I mean, listen, the Napoli deal for Hojlund, I think he's brilliant. I think he can go there. You've seen what's happened to McTominay, and he was, like Anthony, maybe not the same level of joy, but he got a nice greeting when he got to Naples or Rome, where he did his medical. So, yeah, I think from that point of view, and the money's actually pretty good. Like, I think it's not too bad. If they go and qualify for the Champions League, that's a decent deal. Because it's one thing selling a player or letting them go, as we're sort of giving them a little bit of applause for. But I think, some of the fees may be on the lower side, Garnacho, for example. But then again, I think the Hojlund one, I think they've done pretty well. But yeah, so obviously striker was the thing that they wanted to sort all summer, right? That's why they went for Liam Delap straight out the gate, because they knew release clause, he's done it in the Premier League at least for one season, let's get him in. He chose Chelsea, and then that sort of shifted what they were going to do. So Mateus Cunha was in, they pivoted to Brian Mbeumo, who for me, I think he's going to be a brilliant signing, actually. I think I've loved what I've seen so far of him in a United shirt. And Bry. And then Big Bry. It was brilliant celebration, by the way. I don't think I touched on that in the last pod after Burnley. He's kind of run over to the corner, proper jump in the air. Here we go. But then they were basically had this debate: do we go for a number 6 or do we go for a number 9? I think they always wanted to get more goals in the team. That was the main priority, and therefore we need a striker. Benjamin Sesko, who they've obviously tracked for a long time, became available. Newcastle started to have a nibble, so then they're having to kind of react maybe to that. They did make a check call on Hugo Ekitike, I have to say, actually, before he went to Liverpool, when Liverpool were making their approach. So it wasn't necessarily certain exactly who they'd go for, and obviously Ollie Watkins was another option there. But Sesko, I think, is a fair choice to go for, given all the work they've done on him, and let's see how he develops at United. But that then meant they had to shift Rasmus Hojlund, really, and so then they had to get pretty brutal with him. And I said in the piece that I'm not sure the previous regime would have done this to a player who was staying committed, staying, professional. Obviously, Sancho was pretty much exiled. Ronaldo was, contract torn up, but they'd kind of got to a point with the managers where there was definitely, massive disharmony. Hojlund loves United, has wanted to play for them, since he was a young boy coming up. So he didn't want to leave the club. So they had to, get heartless, really. And I've described it as a bit of heartbreak for him to leave United. And so that's what it comes down to ultimately, making him see that his future was elsewhere. And then he's eventually accepted, because I think we said on the last podcast, he did go to Italy without the absolute certainty that he was going to sign for Napoli. I think he kind of wanted to sense the mood there and see how it felt. And then obviously, ultimately, the deal has been done, but it was a delicate one. I think that's as far as I'm aware anyway.
He's played there before. He knows the league. He's going to be a Champions League striker now. I think Laurie's point about him and his family, it was a dream for them to join Manchester United. And there's a lot of sadness there, and even a little bit of anger that the dream has not worked out. But I've only heard good things about his professionalism, and United need to bring money in. And if you look at the games he'll be playing now, he's got some huge matches and he's going to be the main man, playing in a wonderful city. Playing against Sporting, Amorim's old team. He's got a game against Milan away in San Siro. There's a first Champions League game against a team called Men City. Men City. I've not heard of them. Pisa, Torino, all them great Italian clubs, PSV in the Champions League. So let's hope he can be as successful as Scott McTominay there. It's a wonderful place to play football at the moment.
Laurie, you left the name out when you were talking about the summer transfer search for a striker. Did you do that on purpose?
I didn't, but I appreciate you giving me the nice platform to now get into it in its own right without me having to sort of do a clang name drop. I keep, to be honest, I've forgotten what I've written quite a few times. So you, because I missed your tee up, didn't I, for the Rasmus Hojlund exit in the first question that you gave me. So here we go. Thanks for coming back to this one. Danny Welbeck, there we go. Obviously, we mentioned him last summer. Erik ten Hag wanted to sign him before the decision was made on his future, shall we say, and that then inhibited United from going for him properly, and he ultimately signed a new contract at Brighton. But information is that United had a look, explored it, internal discussions around bringing him back to the club again this summer. Ultimately, they decided that the financials weren't right, because he's 35 at the moment, and I think a 2-year contract was what it might have taken to get him to United, and ultimately they decided not to go for it. And I mean, I know I'm very biased on this one. I love the fact that he's a Manchester lad and came through the academy. I just think Danny it would Welbeck. Have been. I know he's still got 10 goals for Brighton last season, top scorer for them alongside Mitoma and João Pedro, who's gone for 60 million to Chelsea in the Premier League anyway. I know he didn't have a great game at Everton, Mr. Penn and Mr.
No, he didn't.
A tap-in, shall we say.
Yeah.
But I like the way he plays. He's talented, he's skillful, and it would have just been quite sweet to see him come back. But ultimately...
Brighton love him, though.
No,
Brighton absolutely love him. The standards he's set in training, the professionalism, they believe that he's raised their standards, basically, in the time that he's been there. And I think they feel like he has been, an incredible influence on that club. So it's clear, despite the age he's at, there is still a huge respect for him. It'd been fascinating to see him come back, wouldn't it? I mean, not least, Carl, just to stop him scoring against us every time we bloody play Brighton or anyone else he's played for.
And the MK Dons redemption arc, it would have been complete then.
Oh, yeah, it would. Look,
he could have stopped Grimsby. That would have been the ultimate, wouldn't it?
Welbs is still that guy for me. So, thank you for double checking here. I think it's been a really interesting approach I've had to the window. They've gone, the team is underperforming in front of goal, and the best way to solve that is getting better strikers. Whereas you sort of a cursory look at my timeline yesterday. I'm seeing loads of United fans scream, "Where's the midfielder?" The best way you solve the creation problem is by bolstering the midfield. So
we'll come to that. Yeah, definitely.
United had a strategy. They didn't get their top striker in the lap, or the most straightforward one in the lap, but they've pivoted well. I think Šeško is a superior striker to Hojlund is right now, and yeah, I'm really excited to see that newly bought front three start clicking, because I think, if only because Šeško can jump really high. I can't wait for that first whipped in ball from Mbeumo to Šeško header at the back post. That's going to be great.
In front of the away fans at the Etihad would be pretty special if you could just time it for then. Benjamin will be we're waiting for that with bated breath. Before we move it on, can we just go back in detail with Jadon Sancho? So it's a loan deal. He's out of contract next summer though, Andy, isn't he? Although United do have the option to extend his deal. That seemed like a very unlikely prospect to me, considering the wages that he's on and considering obviously the time at Old Trafford has not been a success for him. Where do you see the situation sitting with that? Because there's been a lot of talk about the fact that United could still activate it just to ensure that he has some market value, basically.
I think Sancho was the most difficult deal for the club to do in the transfer window. I think United would be disappointed that talks didn't progress sufficiently with Roma. Roma were prepared to pay around 20 million for Jadon Sancho. Manchester United would much rather have that 20 million than no million from Aston Villa. As I said on previous podcasts, video calls were set up, but for whatever reason, Jadon Sancho just didn't fancy going to Roma, and I think that frustrated Manchester United greatly. And the idea that Manchester United could lose the player who cost a huge amount of money in 2021 is a frustration. He's entitled to do what he wants to do. He's got a contract. Difficult one. Be really interesting to speak to Jadon Sancho 10 years after he stopped playing to see if he felt that he made the right calls. Because in my experience, that's when football has entered the real world again, and they're more reflective and they can admit errors themselves.
Yeah, the contract one's interesting because I never thought that there was ever a chance that they would extend it, because he's on quite a lot of money, and this has been the issue with then getting him a new club, because why would he then agree to go somewhere where his wages are reduced and United would have to perhaps pay him some money to do that? More than 200 grand a week, I think, even without the Champions League. United haven't extended his contract just yet. They do have that +1. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they do it. I personally would be surprised.
Why would you do it? Just to make sure you can get a fee for him next summer, because he's still got a year left on his contract. But
yes, yeah.
It feels like a huge risk, doesn't it? Considering how difficult it's been. Do you watch how he gets on at Aston Villa, and if he's brilliant, then trigger the clause? How bloody minded can you be about this?
Yeah, I suppose that's it, right?
It feels like United have had this in the past with Eric Bailly and Phil Jones sort of had their contracts extended or had new contracts in order to protect their value to sell. And I feel as if United are less likely to enact a +1, if only because they've learned the lessons of the previous times they've sort of extended the contract to renew value. I'm fascinated to see how Sancho kicks on at Aston Villa, because he was fine at Chelsea. And my takeaway from his time at Chelsea was, I don't think he's a Premier League football player. I think the level of intensity in the Premier League does not suit how he wants to play football in the half spaces and combine with other teammates. I am going to be watching it a lot, and I hope he does take on Emery's instruction, because he is approaching a sort of very critical career junction in terms of his career, in terms of what he can do in the Premier League. So good luck to him.
I seem to remember there being some detail about Patrice Evra having a +1 extended, Andy. If only we had the author of his autobiography to confirm that.
Yeah, Patrice once turned up at United's team hotel in Los Angeles, having formally left the club, to speak to Louis van Gaal about rejoining the club. It's just wild what Patrice is like. And then a couple of years later, I started, and I was deep into the book with him then. So I was going to see him in Turin, and I'd later go to Marseille and London. He was in Turin, and he's like, I'm coming back to Man United. It's the only club I want to come back to. I'm like, you're saying that, but Man United have also got a choice whether they re-sign you. He said, I've got unfinished business. I'm coming back. And then I remember I was walking around Lisbon. I must have gone there for a job, and I got a message off Patrice saying Ed Woodward had not kindly said to him, thanks for all your service. We're not going to be taking up the offer to bring you back to Old Trafford this time. Patrice, you're always welcome at the club, etc., etc. So, I mean, he once went to Chicago on pre-season, just like fuming at his contract state, and then they have this big argument and he walks out of it with a new contract, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot goes on, that never gets out there, an awful lot, and stuff like that. I mean, none of it was reported at the time. It was only when he told his story in the book. And then players are keeping the people around them happy or unhappy as well. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, we're moving City next week. What? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting.
All part of the fun, isn't it? Just in terms of an overview then of Manchester United's summer transfer window, Carl, how happy are you? I know that's a big question. I mean, just about Manchester United's transfer business this summer. I
am hovering around a B grade, or like I'm in the 6.5 to 7 out of 10. Thumbs up.
Is 6.5, 7 a B grade?
Yeah,
is that the more C territory?
A C is a 5, right?
Oh, okay. I would say 7, 8. 8's a B.
Okay,
8's a B.
All right, then I'm suppose I'm hovering more towards a B negative to a B.
We're in negatives now. Okay,
sorry. In that, I think you've got 4 out of 5 from your bomb squad gone, and it would have been 5 out of 5 if it wasn't for last minute complications with Elche. So good. I was genuinely impressed with that. I think the negotiating up from the initial 25 million for Garnacho to the 40 million and a sell-on fee, good, great. Your new front three, tick. Great. Lammens over Emi Martinez, great. But I really, 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 really think United should have got a midfielder, and I think that is where this season is going to live or die. And I still struggle to think Man United are going to finish higher than 8th because they haven't got the defensive midfielder. And perhaps, maybe, next summer when Casemiro's contract has expired, United can reopen talks for Baleba or go out and get one of the other midfielders that Laurie's mentioned an appreciation for in his piece. But I think in this season, not getting a midfielder makes it very hard for me to give it any higher than a B grade.
Andy, any advance on B- from Mr. Anka?
I think B would sound very positive. Happy with the players who've come in, but ask me properly after 6 months, because you all have this, you think that they're all going to work out. Right now, I think that every one of them is going to work out, and history has shown that simply doesn't come close to happening. I think the point about the midfielder is accurate, but you have the club who A, needs to bring money in, B, we're not playing European football, so we're severely constrained. This is going to take multiple windows. I think Manchester United's team is going to look vastly different, even 2 years down the line, to how it looks now. So you've got 4 midfielders. You've got Bruno Fernandes, who's the captain, has been the main man. You've got Ugarte. He's really got to raise his game because he's had... I think he played really well in New York pre-season, and after that, there's been interceptions or minutes, but he's got to raise his game. Kobe's going to get a chance, you would hope. This is a big season for Kobe Mainoo. And then you've got Casemiro, who's one of the best paid footballers in the world. He's not the Casemiro of old. So that's why people are worrying about Manchester United's midfield. And they've seen in the game so far why we've been worried about it. And if you look at the players that Liverpool have brought in, for example, but then Manchester United are not competing with Liverpool this year, although I hope we knock them out the FA Cup with the last minute winner. So yes, I would like to see a midfielder, but then I think there's a sense of, and even if we'd sign a midfielder, fans would want more until the team's looking complete. I think given the constraints, it could be an encouraging window, not just because of the players who've come in, but because of the players who've been moved on as well.
Yeah, it felt an important window, Laurie, to sort out some of the issues that Ruben Amorim felt that the team had with the decisions he took right at the start of pre-season. Just talking about the churn actually as well, Tom's email, only 2 players started the winning FA Cup final 16 months ago and last weekend's victory against Burnley. I mean, some of those were injuries with Martinez, an out-of-favour player in Onana. But yeah, looking across it, Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Dalot and Bruno Fernandes were the 2 players who started it. But Amrabat, Garnacho, McTominay, Rashford, there's been a big change even since then. There's been a change in management, obviously, of course, as well. But yeah, the finances, Laurie, I mean, £250 million plus add-ons, roughly, is what Manchester United have spent. They've brought in, the club believes, about £80 million so far, plus add-ons and sell-ons to be added for that. There's obligation for Hojlund and an option for Marcus Rashford, which could be worth, taking the sales up to 150 million. There's then the sell-ons, which United have got in for Oyedele, Correas and Langa. The Sancho 5 million punishment penalty to Chelsea, which might be in last year's calculation. But generally speaking, looking across it, how well do you think they've done this summer? Is this what we expected, or is this far more?
I think this is good. I mean, again, time will tell in terms of the signings. Obviously,
B minus, maybe C plus.
No, I would say B. I would say B, just because they've got Mbeumo, Cunha, 2 Premier League experienced players. They feel exciting to me. I know they might have ups and downs, but I like it. Sesko, they've trapped for a long time. I can see what they're doing with that. And then Lammens, we'll see. I don't know. Lowe's obviously he's only had 1 season, so it's tough to really put your flag in the ground on that one.
Would you feel better if they'd signed a more senior goalkeeper, considering the problems there's been at the start of this season?
I don't know who's out there really. I mean, Donnarumma, on a massive amount. Obviously, City have done that one. So, he would have been on way more than Bruno Fernandes, for example. That's what he was requesting. And how can you give that to a goalkeeper over your captain who's held the club together? Okay, you can criticise some of his tactical play at times, but beyond that, so I could see why they're trying to get the next one, aren't they? David De Gea came in, needed a bit of time to settle, but then ultimately was United's goalkeeper for a very long time. So I think that's what they're trying to do here. And so I think the midfield is probably the one where you're like, could they have done something there? On the flip side, they tried for Carlos Baleba. They might just be waiting, for him at a later point. So you don't want to spend money that you're going to try and invest on the guy that you really want to bring in. And then they do want to give, from what they're saying, chances to Kobe Mainoo. So if they'd signed a midfielder, he would have been even more perhaps marginalised and frustrated at the situation. So again, let's see how much he does get under Amorim. But then you've got Ugarte, who they only signed last summer. So, as that defensive midfielder, he's really the guy, because he hasn't performed well enough. He should have been this player that is the Casemiro replacement, but Casemiro's better than him, really. So I can see why they've made those calls. Again, let's see in time what will happen. And then overall on the financial picture, as you say, the numbers there, I think United feel that they will be pretty good on FFP, PSR come the next calculation. So at least that's something, because that has been a recurring theme of the last couple of years.
Yeah, we had lots of responses really to United's transfer business. Arvin very much around the same sort of region as you, Carl. 7 out of 10 window. What do you guys think about not signing a midfielder? Will it cost us a top 6 finish? Well, you've heard Carl's take on that just a moment ago. Rinchin said, under normal circumstances, I would have rated this window a 9 out of 10. We've bought quality talent, got rid of some bad contracts and brought some money in through sales, but there's still a gaping hole in that midfield. So midfield is the one, Carl, isn't it, where it felt like United had this crossroads, which Laurie's written about in his piece. Do you get a number 9 and keep faith with Hojlund, or do you get a midfielder, give Kobe more opportunities, give Ugarte another season, let Casemiro see out the final year potentially as a first team player still of his contract? And that's going to be a major thing that we'll look back on at the end of this season and see whether it was right or wrong, I guess.
Possibly, yeah. And maybe even the fact that Hojlund was, it may have been easier to sell Hojlund than it would have been easier to sell Ugarte to get replacements in that respective way. Maybe that factors into things. I'm going to scream about buying central midfielders until Michael Carrick has properly succeeded, because it really does feel like it's been that long since United got the adequate central midfield for there. But we'll see. Andy's completely bang on about it's all well and good saying it's a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 right now, but you do need to wait at least 2 or 3 seasons until things were done. Romelu Lukaku looked to be the solution to our centre forward issues after season 1, and then season 2 just didn't kick on for him. So we will see. I am feeling slightly more confident, and I believe this squad is better than the squad that Amorim inherited in November. But there is just a real problem position in midfield that makes me reluctant to say this is a top 5, top 6 favourite.
All right, well, I think that's a good place to leave it. We are going to be back later on this week with Charlotte Harper, looking ahead to Manchester United's women's side beginning their WSL campaign. They've also now made it through, like we said last time, to the 3rd qualifying round of the Champions League, where they'll take on Norwegian side Brann. There's been some controversy about the travel arrangements for Manchester United's trip over to Stockholm for those qualifiers as well, which we'll talk about with Charlotte. And indeed, if you've got any questions about Mark Skinner's side, anything to do with the men's team, anything to do with the start to the Premier League season, the end of the transfer window, any of the stuff that we've mentioned on the podcast today, please get in touch. We're going to do a bit of a mailbag episode in line with that detail with Charlotte about the women's side on the show later on this week. So please get in touch. devilspod@theathletic.com. Of course, there's also our social media channels as well, at TOT Devils on TikTok, X and Instagram. For the moment, thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe, click the bell so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching this episode of Talk of the Devils. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you've not done already. Like the video and also get involved in the comments too, and click the bell to make sure that you never miss an episode with myself, Andy Mitten, Carl Anka and Laurie Whitwell. There's also our social channels at TOT Devils on Instagram, X and TikTok. Thanks for watching.